Hello, welcome everyone. This is our makeup stream. We supposed to do a stream on Sunday, but it didn't happen because AEW decided to run a pay-per-view. So here we are on Thursday, and we're gonna do what I promised I would do before, and that is take a look inside this Puff Daddy Sean Puffy Combs lawsuit. Um, and it's a nightmare, cuz. It is a real nightmare. 73 pages of nonstop nonsense. Just straight up shenanigans. Um, Welcome again. Let's talk about this. This is despite the fact that a lot of this is about people being gay. I'm not surprised if we're being honest. And I'm not I mean, who thought he wasn't? Is more my question. Um, so that's not really the issue as far as I'm concerned because it's been an open secret for a long time, much like Luther Vandross. I remember when Luther Vandross died, uh, uh, and I started hearing that Luther Vandross was gay, and I remember asking my mom, like, "Mom, was Luther Vandross gay?" And she was a big fan, and in very hushed tones, she said, "Yeah, he was. He was gay." So it didn't matter to anyone that he was gay. It wasn't a matter of what he could do. Well, it was a matter of his skill level. Was he annoyingly gay? Was he in everybody's face, you know, with his lifestyle or anything like that? No. But Diddy has been pretty much in everybody's face for quite a while with this stuff. And let me tell you, it's been an interesting time because again, people have been talking about Diddy being gay since like 1995, right? It's a it's an interesting yet not surprising situation. I'm trying to log into my Twitter account on my tablet, but for some reason it's not working. Why is it not working? I don't know what's going on with this thing. But I want to talk a lot about mostly the accusations that were supposedly occurred in this thing. And as usual, people are innocent until proven guilty. That's how we do things over here. But some of this stuff is just absolutely absurd. You know, like it's absurd. And it's humorous, if we're being honest. WG Phil says 2K24 has been fun. 2K is stepping up over the past 3 years. Good. I'm glad to see that that something is normal. Are they really blurring out faces on 2K? I see that they've been blurring out, like they blurred out Donald Trump and Vince McMahon, and I thought it was cancel culture until I heard they actually blurred out some of the referees too. Are they really blurring out faces on that game? If so, do you know why? Because I'm not sure. Anyway, let's I saw a video that that a lot of this stuff was I don't want to I don't no, let's not go into that. That's a deviation. That's another subject. That's a completely different subject. All right, so this guy named Rodney Jones, Little Rod, he is suing it's seemingly a dozen people, several record labels, label heads, Puff Daddy, Sean Combs, his son, and some other people. The interesting thing about this thing is there's a trigger warning on the lawsuit telling you that there's going to be some real problematic stuff inside it. WG Phil tells me that the blurring faces is due to the slingshot feature where they are not doing full animated cutscenes, but Trump events is most definitely cancel culture BS. Interesting. Didn't they blur out one of the referees? I think they blurred out one of the referees too. So, part of this problem that I have here in reading this lawsuit, I was getting real agitated because I was having a hard time, at least when I started reading it, trying to figure out how this pertains to crimes in the state of New York and how it was crimes against Rodney Jones himself. Like, I was thinking, like, why are we even talking about stuff that happened in California? Why are we talking about stuff that happened in Miami? Why are we talking about stuff that happened supposedly on a yacht on the Virgin Islands? Like, why are we talking about that stuff? Why is that stuff in here? Like, that was the first thing that popped into my head upon reading it. I don't go for the gossip. The gossip stuff is okay. But I'm trying to figure out, why is this in here? New York cannot prosecute anybody for crimes that happen in California or in the Virgin Islands. But this guy can say that this was part of sex trafficking, that he was taken on all these trips to different places, because he's a grown man, by the way. Grown man. And what really kind of turned me against him wasn't really the stories that he was telling. It was a picture that was in there. Now, I'm not against Rodney Jones, if we're being honest. Oh, what did they say he did? Oh, I thought everybody knew. Okay, so let's talk about what Puff Daddy is accused of. Let's go to the allegations. There's a lot of allegations in here. There's just so much. There's allegations that he uses homosexual sex as a way to groom people into the music business. So he basically is a quid pro quo, sex for advancement kind of deal. That he provides underage girls and sex workers to various talents for parties. That he sexually assaulted the Rodney Jones, that guy. That he tried to trade Rodney Jones off to Cuba Gooding Jr., even though Cuba Gooding Jr. is not being sued here. Oddly enough, that was a weird thing. He claimed that Diddy was trying to pawn him off on Cuba Gooding Jr., but he's not suing Cuba Gooding Jr. Interesting. He talks about a bunch of people engaging in gay sex. There's a lot of stuff in here. But when it comes to the record labels, the claims is that the record labels know about this stuff and have been silently complicit in Diddy's behavior in terms of allowing him to do the things that he's been doing for as long as he's been doing it. So there's a lot of drugs and all kinds of stuff in here. There's one of these young women. Her name is Christina Coram, who the attorneys for this guy says is the Ghislaine Maxwell to Sean Combs' Jeffrey Epstein. It is psychotic, the stuff that you're seeing in here. And they're supporting pictures, but the pictures don't always show what you think. Now, this goes back to what I was saying before, where I started asking questions, like very important questions about this lawsuit. Is when the guy was talking about Cuba Gooding Jr. Now, I don't know if Cuba Gooding Jr. is gay or not. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. But he put in here that Cuba Gooding Jr. was forcefully touching him and forcefully sexually assaulting him. And for proof, he posted a picture of himself and Cuba Gooding Jr. And the proof that he was sexually assaulted by Cuba Gooding Jr. It's not Cuba Gooding Jr. grabbing him by the crotch or grabbing him by the butt. It is a picture of Cuba Gooding Jr.'s arm around him, and with the caption of, "This is a picture of Cuba Gooding Jr. forcefully touching me." And I instantaneously was like, bro, this is nonsense. Like, if this is what this guy is calling sexual assault or forceful touching or whatever, it's like, come on, man. If you bump somebody in the alley, it's sexual assault at this point. But the point of this is, of course, to get a hefty, as hefty as possible settlement. That's the point of all this. But this guy is pretty mad. Now, the reason why he's talking about all this stuff and he's exposing them is because apparently he didn't get paid for the work he did on Puff Daddy's The Love album. I have a history of calling Diddy Puff Daddy because that's who he was when I met him. When I met him, when I first saw him on TV, I really didn't get into all the name changes. But on page 23 of the lawsuit, there's a picture of Cuba Gooding Jr. with his arm around Rodney Jones, and it says Cuba Gooding Jr. forcibly touching Mr. Jones on Mr. Combs' yacht. But when you look at the picture, Rodney Jones is smiling, and Cuba Gooding Jr. is looking at him very strangely. I will say that is very strange, but they're looking at something, or he's producing something on record, and it doesn't look like it's too inappropriate. But they got pictures of underage girls with their faces blacked out. But if the faces are blacked out, how do we know that they're underage girls? There's supposedly sex workers in here. That's not illegal. Well, it's illegal to solicit sex, but they're already selling it. So what? There's a ton of other stuff in here of how he was forcefully made to engage in sex with sex workers. There's a bunch of stuff. I think I've danced around it enough. Let's get right into it because I'm kind of spoiling it a lot. All right. So here is the summary of events. He says, after putting himself over as a musical prodigy, even though I've never heard of him, it says from September 22nd to November 23rd, Mr. Jones produced 9 songs on Mr. Combs' Love album. Mr. Jones lived with Mr. Combs for a month at a time, spending holidays, birthdays, missing major family events. Mr. Jones resided at Mr. Combs' residence in Los Angeles, California, and New York City, and Miami, Florida. Mr. Jones also spent several weeks on a yacht rented by Mr. Jones in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Throughout this time, Mr. Combs witnessed, experienced, endured many things that went far beyond his role as a producer on the Love album. The claims raised in this complaint have been corroborated through witness statements, video, audio recordings, and images that Mr. Jones has in his possession. Mr. Combs required Mr. Jones to record constantly. On several occasions, Mr. Combs took Mr. Jones' cell phone and began recording himself. As a result, Mr. Jones has secured hundreds of hours of footage and audio recordings of Mr. Combs, his staff, and his guests engaging in serious illegal activity. Mr. Jones has secured irrefutable evidence of the acquisition, use, and distribution of ecstasy, cocaine, GHB, ketamine, marijuana, and mushrooms, the displaying and distribution of unregistered illegal firearms. Mr. Combs produced laced alcoholic beverages to minors and sex workers at homes in California, New York, and the Virgin Islands, as well as in Florida. Mr. Combs' chief of staff, Christina Coram, instructed her staff to retrieve drugs so she can provide it to Mr. Combs for his consumption. Christian Combs, who is one of the sons of Diddy, drugging and sexually assaulting a woman. Mr. Combs detailing how he planned to leverage his relationship with Bishop T.G. Jakes to soften the impact of his public image of the Cassie Ventura lawsuit. Young Miami's cousin or assistant sexually assaulting Mr. Jones. Actor Cuba Gooding Jr. sexually harassing and assaulting Mr. Jones. Rapper Redacted on Mr. Combs' yacht, consorting with underage girls, sex workers, and R&B singer Redacted in Mr. Combs' Los Angeles home, consorting with underage girls and sex workers. Now, most people who are reading this say that the two Redacteds are Meek Mill and Usher. Now, that's what a lot of people think, and I'm not I don't care either way. All right, that's it's funny if it's Meat Mill. I joined in and making fun of Meat Mill because of this because it was fun to do, and I don't like Meat Mill, so it worked out just fine for me. But as hints why people got this stuff, it says one of the redacted is uh, 3, and the R&B singer is 4. It says 3. It says he is a Philadelphia rapper who dated Nicki Minaj. 4 is redacted. It says he is a Grammy Award-winning R&B singer who had trouble with law enforcement after assaulting a Bayesian billionaire. So, do I think Diddy diddled Mace? Interestingly enough, no. I do think that he probably introduced some really foul shit around Mace, though. I mean, how you go from a gangster to just disappearing and popping up somewhere else as a pastor? You had to see some real demon shit. You know, like just imagine what kind of demonic horseshit that Mace probably did see in the 90s before everybody had a camera. Before, you could control this kind of stuff in like 1998. You could control this. But now everybody's got a cell phone, so everybody's recording something, everybody's taking a selfie or taking a picture. And unless you go full Bohemian Grove and take everybody's personal materials, this kind of stuff is bound to come out. So I'm not surprised at all we're seeing all these crazy lawsuits, but there's more to it than that, I think. There's something far more sinister at play, if we're being honest. I'm not quite ready to put the conspiracy theory out there yet, but I'm almost ready to put the conspiracy theory out there yet. I could throw out a half-baked conspiracy theory, but I don't want to do that right now. Now, so Mr. Jones goes into Mr. Jones goes into a shooting at a radio studio, not a radio studio, I'm sorry, a recording studio, the Chalice Club shooting that he claims that he was traumatized upon seeing Diddy's son shoot somebody. He says Justin Combs shot him. I don't know why. I mean, is it believable? I don't know. I don't know. But so there's pictures of like blood and everything, and it's real nasty. So it starts talking about, and this is when it took a while for us to get here in terms of, I was getting frustrated reading this thing up to this point, but it talks about page 12. It started talking about Mr. Jones specifically being sexually assaulted or sexually harassed by Puff Daddy. Okay. So it says Mr. Jones was the victim of constant, unsolicited, and unauthorized groping and touching of his anus by Mr. Combs. He was a victim of constant, unsolicited, and this is a grown man. Now, if I apply the same logic to this case as I apply to the Janelle Grant thing, it's double because you're a full-grown adult man and you got your anus touched, you got diddled by Diddy, and you didn't do anything? Wait a minute. Okay. He says that these events took place in Los Angeles, New York, Florida, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. He says, in addition to the unsolicited and unauthorized touching, Mr. Jones was forced by Mr. Combs to work in Mr. Combs' bathroom as Mr. Combs walked around naked and showered in a clear glass enclosure. So he was producing records in Puff Daddy's bathroom, and Puff Daddy decided he was going to go take a shower, asshole naked, right in front of this man. As a heterosexual Christian man, Mr. Jones was uncomfortable with Mr. Jones was uncomfortable with Mr. Combs' advances and expressed his discomfort to Mr. Combs' chief of staff, Christina Coram. The question of how you just let these things happen is beyond me. All right, this man took you to all these places required for you to get on airplanes. All you had to do was not get on the fucking airplane. I don't understand it, but it's not for me to understand. And we in a situation now, man, where asking just very important questions, just whatever. But this is one allegation that I'm about to read here that I actually do believe occurred. Okay. Mr. Jones believes that KK aided and abetted, KK being Christina Coram, aided and abetted Mr. Combs' sexual assault of him and was working with Mr. Combs to groom him into accepting a homosexual relationship. I believe this. Now, the reason why I believe this is because Diddy is gay. So he's gay. But that ties into this. Mr. Combs attempted to groom Mr. Jones into engaging in gay sex. This is 100% believable. All right. This is 100% believable. Not a lot of people can resist the temptation, let's say. How many times you think he did that to Biggie? Man, there's no telling. See, the thing is, whatever it is now, it was worse in the 90s. Because again, now things like homosexuality are far more open. Things like chasing trannies is far more open and accepted. Nobody cares if you're chasing trannies today. In 1995, you would want to keep that absolutely secret. You wouldn't want nobody to know that you were engaged in gay sex, trans sex, and doing hard drugs. Like, it was not cool to be a crackhead in the 80s and 90s and stuff. Even though a lot of people was doing heroin even in the past and, snorting a little powder here and there, it was not like a fashionable thing to do. And if you were trying to keep your reputation intact, especially in the gangster rap era, you certainly didn't want anybody to know that you was a human butt plug. You didn't want nobody to know that. So it was easier to control you then. But now getting outed for being gay is like, so what? So what if you're gay? It's 2024. There's very few people out here who ain't gay or dabbling in being gay. But it's also a sign of, I guess you could say, when you live in the Bacchanal and sex is a thing that just happens so freely for you, you kind of get bored and you start doing things. And when it comes to getting bored and doing things, you might want to spice things up. So then you start doing multiple girls. Then, you start doing orgies. And next thing you know, you are engaging in all kind of horrible shit. Sidebar, do you think Vince McMahon is gay? I think he probably dabbled. If I had to venture a guess, I would venture a guess that Vince has dabbled in some homosexuality. Do I think he's straight up there's a question I remember me and my friends asking when we had a friend who grew up and he kind of ended up being gay. And it was a very simple question when people say that they're not gay, but they've dabbled, they've done stuff here and there. How many dicks do you have to suck to be gay? And the answer is one, right? Like, the answer is one. If you did it once, I don't see how you're not gay. So I guess from that perspective, I would say probably. I think he just lived a debaucherous lifestyle, and I think a lot of these people do. They probably find normal women boring. They get tired of fucking strippers and models and all this kind of stuff. Like, what might be, great, like 30 or 40 years of having all kinds of models and stuff. It's got to be, the challenge is gone. You turn your attention to something new, I guess. But isn't that something Jake Roberts would say? I think so. I think so. But I do believe that he probably engaged in some stuff, you know. But I think the more salacious um, things are probably just sexual deviancy, and a lot of these guys do get off on the sexual deviancy. But Puff being gay is, come on. I think Puff's primary is boys. You know, if we're being honest. All right, so back to this thing. Mr. Combs attempted to groom Mr. Jones into engaging in gay sex. So he says, basically, I'm not going to read this whole thing. Stevie J, I've heard of him, but I don't know who he is. Anyway, he was part of the Bad Boy production team, the Hitman. Apparently, Stevie J is somebody that Mr. Jones looked up to. And Mr. Jones was told by Puff, essentially, that, Stevie J engages in gay sex and that it's okay to be gay because Stevie J is gay. And so he was sent a video of Stevie J supposedly having sex with another man. And these pictures are put into the lawsuit. Pictures of Stevie J supposedly engaging in sexual intercourse. Mr. Combs informed Mr. Jones that he engaged in sexual intercourse with rapper and R&B singer, both redacted, and Stevie J. And he says he is a Philadelphia rapper who dated Nicki Minaj. He performed at the Super Bowl and has a successful Vegas residency. So this would be Usher and Meek Mill. Now, the Usher thing is especially weird because Usher and Puff go way, way back to when Usher was a little kid. And so a lot of people are not really kind of making fun of Usher like they made fun of Meek Mill, because Usher would have been a child in the 90s when this kind of stuff started. So it's similar to the Lil Wayne thing, where people, when Lil Wayne was like, late 20s, early 30s, they made fun of him for kissing Birdman in the mouth and all that other weird shit. And they were kind of like, man, how long has that stuff been going on? And then you talk to like the other hot boys, nobody else experienced that. Juvenile said that never happened with him. BG said that never happened to him. It was only Lil Wayne that he was kissing in the mouth and continuously kissing him in the mouth. That's some weird shit. That's some weird shit, man. You think the little person from the Ghetto Boys, that would be Bushwick Bill. Why would Puff Daddy want to have sex with Bushwick Bill? Why would anybody want to have sex with Bushwick Bill? He's got kids too, which is weird. And that tells you that women will do anything if you got a little bit of fame and a little bit of money. The fact that midgets reproduce is absolutely hilarious. I find it very entertaining to think that little people have babies. All right, so he starts talking about getting sexually assaulted by Young Miamis because I'm about to be old for a second. I have no earthly idea who Young Miami is, but Mr. Jones tells this story of him being sexually assaulted by the cousin of Young Miami. And he says he went to the bathroom and Young Miami's cousin came in there and grabbed him. And he believes that Mr. Combs sent her in there to sexually assault Mr. Jones. She said she dropped to her knees and started performing oral sex on Mr. Jones's exposed penis. He pushed her away and exited the bathroom. This is not exactly a very small man. She dropped to her knees and started performing oral sex on his exposed penis. And I'm guessing he was in there peeing and she slurped his pee off of his penis, apparently. Because it had to still be out, right? So he turned around and was shocked and she immediately gawk. Like, what? That's weird. Young Miami says she lets Diddy piss on her. Well, I don't know these people, man. I don't know enough about these people, man, to I'm gonna take the word for it. I would take the word for it. But it happened. It must have happened fast, cause I mean, she burst in the bathroom while you pissing, and gok, gok, gok. It happened that quick. It happened so fast you were still in shock. And she a Mach 5 runner. You feel me? God damn. I didn't even my brain shut off, and she was already still doing it. I didn't have time to register it. She's the Flash of dick suckers. It happened so quickly. Before I got out, what are you doing? Get the fuck out of here. So they show these pictures of him and Diddy sitting on the couch. Pictures of, I don't know who Young Miami is, but it's her and her cousin. I have no idea of who these people are. So he says that he was sex trafficked. And he says that while he was transported from California to New York, Florida, and the U.S. Virgin Islands, during this time, he was forced to solicit sex workers and perform sex acts to the pleasure of Mr. Combs. It says on or about February 4th, Mr. Combs forced Mr. Jones to bring prostitutes and sex workers back to his home in Miami, Florida. And how do you force somebody to bring other people back? How? I don't understand. How do you force people to do this? So he talked about this, them doing cocaine with $100 bills. He says he required Mr. Jones to solicit sex workers from the booby trap on the river. Mr. Jones did so, and Mr. Combs forced him to engage in unsolicited sex acts with these workers. So this guy traveled from one place to another, picked up some women, brought them back, all because Diddy told him to, with no gun to his head. He was forced to do this. This sounds ridiculous, bro. Like on its face, it sounds ridiculous. Again, you would have to be a human remote control car. Somebody would have to control your life with a remote to make you go do stuff you don't want to do. I can't faction. I can't conceive that people just do things that other people tell them to wait, and you don't want to do it. I just don't get it. Go get some hoes. Okay. And then later on, you like, he made me do it. He made me go get them hoes. He made me nut in them hoes. Like, no, come on, man. This is crazy. This is crazy. Here's the thing, bro. Here's the thing. Before we continue this, for starters, he posted the pictures of the two hookers that he wouldn't picked up from Mr. Combs. He blocked out their faces, but their bodies are very, very nice, by the way. Nice bodies on these chicks. I guess he wanted to tell everybody he had sex with these women. But these are supposedly the women he was forced to go and get from the booby trap on the river. In any event, when it comes to doing things you don't want to do, you can be forced, which usually involves some level of coercion. The thing is, when their faces are covered, you can't really tell how old they are. Special J. Now, the women that he posted, the Instagram women, now these are fully grown women, and they're in great shape. I mean, they're in fantastic shape. And you wouldn't have had to put the gun to my head. I can tell you that much. If I'm in Florida and I'm with Diddy and he got like infinite money and drugs and all this kind of stuff, and these girls want to go back, you ain't got to put a gun to my head. But anyway, that's me. I'm not saying I'm him. He's trying to position himself as being a good Christian man who didn't want to engage in all this stuff. I'm looking at it and said, you was around a lot of sex and partying for a guy who didn't want to do no sex and no partying. All right. He was around a lot of it for not wanting to do any of it. But here's what I was going to get to. You can be coerced into doing things. That involves some kind of force or the threat of force. Okay? Saying you're going to get fired from a job to me is not force. Because you can always get a new job. But you can be enticed, you can be tempted, and you can be incentivized. All those things require you to actually want something. All right? Anybody can be tempted with something that they actually want. You can catch any fish with the right bait, right? So that means as he's talking about this here, he wanted to work with Stevie J. He wanted to produce songs for Puff Daddy. And in order to want to do that, he was tempted with all this pussy and these drugs and all this stuff. And he was forced to do all of this, even though he packed his bags, got on an airplane, flew from this city to this city, from this city to for a year. He did this. Going and picking up hoes, bringing them back, banging them. And then the whole time, I guess he was sitting in the corner crying because he didn't really want to do it. So Special J says, Jim Jones said he made ran because he was Mace. I guess you meant Mace ran because he was about to get murdered in Harlem. But Cam also told the story of seeing Diddy dildo in the bathroom. Made get the titties. I saw that. Cam is crazy, dog. Sometimes it's hard to tell when he's being serious because he says silly shit. But I for some reason I believe most most of the debauchery and orgies and stuff, like a lot of the sexual stuff that's going on in here, I believe it. I just don't believe that he was forced into it. This Rodney Jones, I just don't believe he was forced to participate. I believe that everybody was partying around him. There was hoes, there was powder, there's liquor, and all this kinds of stuff, and he just engaged. It is what it is. But it's a quick come up to sue people these days because nobody asked whether this stuff is true or not. They just instantly started making fun of Meek Mill for being gay, Usher for being gay, and saying, "Oh my God, Diddy is the most horrible human being of all time." They didn't ask whether this stuff was telling the truth or anything. So here, this subject, it says Mr. Combs and J. Combs, would be Justin, solicits drugs and engages in illicit sex acts with minors and sex workers. So he starts talking about listening parties and that he Puff Daddy forced all the women to drink laced De Leon liquor. This was in California, so why would you bring this up in a New York lawsuit? This took place in California, but the point is to poison the well. So they got pictures of this supposed party, and it says Mr. Combs was an underage female, but we can't tell if the female is underage for real. We don't know who she is. There's supposedly another underage female. Again, we can't tell how old these people really are. And there's a sex worker in there. Again, we don't know if that's true. And Justin Combs was an underage female. I don't know how. Justin is 30, isn't he? And it says that he's there with an underage female, but there's faces blocked out again, so we don't know for sure. So then here's another one. In the U.S. Virgin Islands, he gets on a boat after being forced to get on airplanes multiple times. He's forced to get on a boat, a yacht, with Puff Daddy. He says, quote, Mr. Jones believes that Mr. Combs was grooming him to pass off to his friends. This fear became reality when Mr. Combs introduced Mr. Jones to Cuba Gooding Jr. while they were on Mr. Combs' yacht. During the introduction, Mr. Combs suggested that Cuba get to know Mr. Jones better, quote unquote, get to know. He then left them alone in a makeshift studio on the yacht. So he took some screenshots of some pictures of him, of videos, and different things like this. And he says Cuba Gooding Jr. began touching, groping, and fondling Mr. Jones' legs, his upper inner thigh near his groin, the small of his back near his buttocks and his shoulders. He was in there getting groped like a bitch by Cuba Gooding Jr. on a yacht. And it was just him and Cuba Gooding Jr. in this room. Now, he claimed he got a video of all of this. I would actually be interested in seeing that. He says he was uncomfortable. He leaned away from Cuba Gooding Jr. and says that Cuba Gooding Jr. did not stop until Mr. Jones forcibly pushed him away. The following screenshot of the encounter with Cuba Gooding Jr. and is a picture of Cuba Gooding Jr.'s arms, well, one arm around his shoulder. The other arm, I can't tell where it is, but Rodney Jones is smiling. So here we go to the Love album. He starts talking about how he produced 9 records for the Love album. He says that Mr. Jones attempted to work with Mr. Combs to secure his publishing and royalty rights. Mr. Combs only offered Mr. Jones $29,000 for 13 months, thousands of hours of work, and 9 songs made it to the Love album. Mr. Jones was willing to take $50,000, his publishing and royalties. Mr. Combs' self-serving greed would not allow him to pay Mr. Jones an additional $21,000. Now, come on. Now, here's an interesting bit, and they do this. He posted a hyperlink to a story about Cuba Gooding Jr. forcibly touching other individuals against their will. So he's trying to poison the well by saying, well, Cuba Gooding Jr. did this to other people, so he must have did it to me. When he's smiling in the picture, and the one picture is just the two of them, it looked like, Rodney Jones might have been talking and Cuba Gooding Jr. might have been listening. It didn't imply anything sexual whatsoever. And then why are you not suing him for forcibly sexually assaulting you? I mean, he got money, right? I never understand why people choose to sue one person and not another. So he wanted $50,000 for and his publishing and royalties, but Puff says $29,000, no publishing and no royalties. This sounds like this is the bone of contention here. You just want to sue him because he wouldn't want to pay you. He said Mr. Combs' deceptive business practices became so bad that Mr. Jones left with no choice other than to take a public plea to social media for Mr. Combs to pay him for his work. They show screenshots of him making public comments and things like this. And then he started getting threatened by other third parties. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of all of these guys. So Mr. Combs used his power and influence to threaten and intimidate Mr. Jones. And this is believable. Mr. Jones. Now, I want to be honest with this. I want to be very clear in reading this, because of all the insane things that I've heard, this one is quite simply the most insane. According to Mr. Jones, Mr. Combs is very forceful and demanding. Mr. Combs does not take no for an answer and will often threaten to inflict bodily harm on Mr. Jones if Mr. Jones did not comply with his demands. Mr. Combs threatened to eat Mr. Jones's face. He threatened to eat his face. He threatened to eat his face. So now he's a cannibal too. On another occasion, Mr. Combs' bedroom, while standing in Mr. Combs' bedroom. Why is he in his bedroom? Mr. Jones was forced to watch as Mr. Combs displayed his guns and bragged about getting away with shooting people. Mr. Combs shared that he was responsible for the shooting in the nightclub in New York with rapper Shine. Again, this has nothing to do, well, this actually occurred in New York, but this was over 10 years ago. This is almost 20 years ago. So I don't know. So apparently Diddy has some kind of fixer by the name of Fahim Muhammad who uh who handles things for him. I'm not going to get into this because it's a little too much. So then he starts talking about the other defendants, Ethiopia, Habtemarium, sounds Haitian to me. Lucian Charles Grange, Motown Records, Love Records, Universal Music Group. They aided and profited off of Sean Combs' RICO enterprise. I want to get to the important element of this. There was one real thing that was said in here that I actually do kind of agree with. But if those of you who are trying to keep, we're on like page 32. So it says Mr. Combs funded and used his affiliation with local gangs and gang leaders who would frequent his homes in LA and Miami to secure the drugs and guns he obtained and distributed out of his homes in LA and Miami. Defendants executed their RICO enterprise with threats of violence, threatening to eat plaintiff's face, displaying and distributing guns in plaintiff's presence, bragging about having law enforcement under control, bragging about murdering people, and bragging about bribing witnesses and jurors in the criminal case concerning the 1999 NYC nightclub shooting with Shine. They executed their RICO enterprise with threats of isolation from the music industry, parading powerful music industry executives such as defendants Lucian Grange, Ethiopia Habtemarium, at his parties filled with sex workers, minors, and illegal drugs, such as ecstasy, cocaine, GHB, ketamine, marijuana, and mushrooms. They executed their RICO enterprise with threats of non-payment for work, fake promises of cash payments, Producer of the Year awards, such as and guaranteed access to future projects. This is one of the other things that I skipped over in trying to shorten this thing. But he claims that Diddy promised him $250,000 and a Grammy if he started doing all this stuff. So Diddy is like the real devil, like the literal devil. He's promising you the world, you know. Mr. Combs is allowed to wreak havoc, straight havoc. By the way, there's a lot of havoc. It's crazy. So the causes of action, I don't. This is kind of deep. This is very legalese here. But it says that the respondent superior defendants, Lucian Grange, Ethiopia Habtemarium, Combs Global, Motown Records, Love Records, Universal Music Group, are 100% liable for the actions of Sean Combs, Justin Combs, Christina Coram, as they were acting in their capacities as the respondent superior collectives employees when they committed the acts detailed below. The respondent superior collective failed to adequately monitor, warn, or supervise the actions of Sean Combs, Justin Combs, and Christina Coram. So they get into a lot of the legal arguments that they're trying to make here. And he says defendants have unlawfully increased their profits by luring and deceiving producers, musicians, writers, creators, and artists, such as plaintiffs, to transport drugs, transport firearms, solicit minors, exotic dancers, sex workers, and to utilize their talents and labor to produce music and other tangible goods and services without compensation. It's weird that he said that Puff was willing to pay him. So how are you doing all this without compensation? They offered to pay you. They just didn't offer to pay you what you wanted, which is not the same thing as not being paid. That's a completely different thing. It says all defendants have engaged in and the activities of which affect interstate and foreign commerce. It's comprised of an association, in fact, of persons, including defendants and other unnamed co-conspirators. That association, in fact, was structured by various contracts and contractual relationships between the defendants. So they're trying to create a RICO by saying all of these people work together. They all bound by contracts, and the benefit of Diddy's parties and all this kind of stuff benefits the higher ups, so they allow it to occur. And I want to get to a very specific point. I don't think this is it, but this is important. The members of the RICO enterprise share a common purpose: to enrich themselves financially and sexually at the expense of producers, musicians, writers, creators, and artists by maximizing defendants' revenues through fraudulent means. Defendants benefited financially from their scheme to defraud plaintiff, including by making false representations that claim that loyalty and obedience to Mr. Combs will result in payments, $250,000, Grammy Awards, access to future projects, access to famous celebrities, access to famous athletes, a $20 million home on Star Island in Miami. Promises that plaintiff can increase his chances of securing cash payments, etc., same things, by involuntarily sleeping with sex workers in the presence of Mr. Combs, and by utilizing their talents and labor to produce music and other tangible goods and services without compensation, which defendants would not have done but for the existence of this scheme. So these are the carrots. All of these various things here, which Diddy could have just given him and would have been infinitely cheaper than anything that is going to come out of this. Imagine this guy wanted $250,000. That would have. Are you serious? 250 grand? Diddy probably got that in a shoebox under one of his mansions. That would have been nothing. He could have gave the fucking guy a Grammy if he wanted one. I'm pretty sure Diddy has access to people who have Grammys. He said access to famous celebrities. He had access to famous celebrities. He claimed they sexually assaulted him. Cuba Gooding Jr. is famous. A lot of this stuff is repetitive because they're mentioning the same things over and over again. So we're going to move to the next section. Then he claimed that they were committing wire fraud. I'm not going to get too deep into that. So sexual assault and sexual harassment is also a claim. Boat trip too. There's a lot of it's just a lot. It's just a lot. It's this is page 47. It's 73 pages, man. Like he's claiming that these guys are liable for all of this stuff that's occurred to him. Him being grabbed by Cuba Gooding Jr. and Young Miami's cousin and all this stuff. It's just a lot. And a lot of it is written to be very sensational, which you already know. Yeah. I don't know if it's bogus, but I guess that's what he's leaning on to get people to believe that it happened to him. Is that a picture of Cuba Gooding Jr. and him on a boat, and then a hyperlink to Cuba Gooding Jr. supposedly forcefully sexually harassing or touching somebody else whenever that usually occurred. He's still famous. I don't understand how's he not famous anymore. He might not be able to get in movies and stuff like that anymore, but he's still famous. I still know who he is, and I don't know who the fuck Young Miami is. Saved my goddamn life. If you put a gun to my head, I wouldn't know who it was. I'm trying to find this very specific passage that I read in here. But I can't seem to find it. Did I write it down? I probably wrote it down, but didn't write what page. Yeah, I wrote it down, but I didn't write what page. I took notes from this thing too, but I didn't write down the page. I started writing down page numbers, and I guess it got so long I got lazy and stopped taking notes. And plus, once it starts getting into the legalese of it, I kind of lost interest. Oh, well, that's it. That's the end. Yeah, page 71. I'm gonna have to do a search then. Let's do a search for the specific words that I'm looking for. How y'all doing, man? I'm glad y'all didn't read this shit. This stuff is dumb. If I was Diddy, I'd fight it. Okay, here it is. This is what I was looking for. The cash that defendants Lucian Grains, Ethiopia Haptimarium, Motown Records, Love Records, etc., provided went far beyond providing routine sponsorship, partnership, and employment conversation for a subordinate. Did I say conversation? I meant compensation. It was from routine for defendants to provide substantial sums of cash per year to Mr. Combs, who did not have an apparent legitimate need for such extravagant sums. The sheer number of listening parties, yacht parties, and nighttime writers' camps after parties in which defendants uh, sponsored went far beyond normal for the music industry. The defendants knew or should have known that they were feeding Mr. Combs' sexual deviancy. Moreover, the circumstances in which Mr. Combs was requesting such large amounts were far from routine and should have raised numerous red flags, taking it well outside routine circumstances. That's on page 59, and this is what I agree. I agree 100% with this right here. That if you were the sheer number of parties Diddy manages to have in a year is insane. Now, I would say this. I will argue this. He's not a normal or regular artist, Diddy. You know? Diddy is not a normal or regular artist. This guy has 30 years of clout behind him. If he wants to have a listening party in every other town, he can do that, and the labels will pay for it because he's got such a history of success. So the idea that, well, this is far, over the line and it should have been a red flag. It's like, well, he might have had a listening party in LA, and then had a listening party in New York, and then had a listening party in Miami, all for the same album. And there will be different people coming to these different parties. But that sounds normal to me. If you're a single, this is your first album and you have a listening party, okay. It's your first album, you probably don't have a lot of clout. You do one party in New York or one party in LA or something like that, and that's it. But if you got 30 years, you probably got one in Paris. You probably got one in Tokyo. You probably got, listening parties all over the place. That's not out of the ordinary, as far as I'm concerned. And he said he's with Diddy for a year. He probably went to a lot of these parties. But I will say, he does have a point. Diddy have a lot of goddamn parties, but he got a lot of leisure time. The man's a multi-millionaire, almost a billionaire, isn't he? He's got a lot of leisure time. Saying that these people should have known that it was turning into some kind of sex camp, it's like, there's bound to be people going to these parties having sex. That's people go to I go to a house party and end up having sex. You go to frat parties and end up having sex. So there's no doubt that people was probably having sex at these listening parties and these yacht parties and stuff like this. And are they supposed to say no sex at the party? You can't take anybody home from the party? These are grown folks we're talking about here, presumably. Now, there's no doubt there probably is some underage girls floating around in there. Underage guys, too. But this is, I think, is a very important point. You do want to start asking questions about the sheer number of parties and get-togethers, etc., that people in the music business have, especially when they're having these eyes wide shut kind of parties, where it just turns into, it's not just music and dancing, where they're in there doing full performances. It probably is above and beyond. He continues by saying, under the circumstances of this case, the defendants engaged was entirely inconsistent with the ordinary duties of a record label, music group, publishing partner, or as an employer or employee. Says that the defendants ignored the numerous red flags about Mr. Combs was to receive financial benefits from Mr. Combs and his sex trafficking venture. This whole sex trafficking thing has become really, really, really overblown, right? But here's this conspiracy theory I was not fully interested. I'm still half baked on it. But I was watching on I think Jake Shields, the MMA fighter. He posted on YouTube an I Hypocrite video about Michael Jackson and Jews. And I'm pretty much done with the Roman and Greek statue area of YouTube. So I don't know. I know who I Hypocrite is, but I haven't watched a video of his in months. But when I watched that video, I realized something. Michael Jackson, they say he died penniless. He didn't have any money. And while he was going through all of these lawsuits, Sony was trying to steal his catalog. They was trying to steal his publishing. They was trying to, steal all the things, from underneath them. So my conspiracy theory is they bankrupt you with lawsuits. And by they, I mean whoever wants to do you harm. They will bankrupt you through lawsuits. Bogus shit like this. Sex trafficking, child molestation. And you spend hundreds of millions of dollars fighting this stuff. Eventually you hit a certain point. And no matter how much money you have, lawyers manage to eat up a lot of money. And recently you saw that Vince sold, what was it, $400 million worth of stock or something like that. And a lot of people were like, man, it must be a settlement must be coming. And my response was, it's a war chest. And I'm thinking that he's probably preparing for a really, really, really long summer. So either he is about to pay this woman like hundreds of millions of dollars to go away, or he's about to pay these attorneys hundreds of millions of dollars to destroy her. There's no telling. But when you realize how much money Michael Jackson spent, not just on that one settlement, but fighting the various lawsuits, they essentially bankrupted him. They ruined his career. And then you start seeing that this happens all the time because now you need money. And what happens when you need money? You start selling things that you own. And if you wanted Michael Jackson's catalog, well, he needs money now. So maybe he'll sell it to you. And I'm thinking that it's the same thing with Vince. That once he got busted paying off some of these, broads or whatever, it's not that he's growing broke. That's not what I'm thinking of. But what I'm thinking is he saw the wave coming, that they're going to try to bankrupt him with these lawsuits. Because if this one succeeds, if this Janelle Grant lawsuit succeeds, there will be others. There's people licking their chops waiting. Just like when they found out about all those NDAs, they started bringing up Rita Chatterton and a bunch of other people started popping up. There's somebody who's going around finding these people. And like everybody said leading up to this point, it's somebody who he knows. It's somebody who he knows and who knows him and probably knows about this stuff. But most importantly, people have seen that it's an opportunity to get him out of the way. You're in the way. And now TKO and then Mark Shapiro, I think, came out recently and said, Vince has nothing to do with the company and he's never coming back. That's a one way to answer the question. But you see that they successfully took the company right from underneath them. It took them about a year, but they managed to do it. It wasn't enough for him to sell them the company. That wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for him to sell the company. He had to go away. And this almost guarantees that he's going to go away. Because even if he wins in the end, he doesn't win anything. He still sold the only thing that he ever wanted to have, his life's work. His name is still ruined. So even if he beats this case, it doesn't mean anything. Just like Michael Jackson, he beat that case. He beat these child molestation cases. Did it mean anything? After he died, people started taking it a little bit more seriously that he won that case, but people didn't really care. In their view, you're a multi-billionaire or whatever. You got these high-powered attorneys. It's like you're not really going against another person. You're going against the state. And then you don't even know really who's funding the other side. Who's helping the other side? And that kind of ties into the Fannie Willis situation that was going on now, right? Like, I'm pretty sure when she lined up her firing squad on Donald Trump, she did not see what was happening to her coming. She didn't see this coming. She didn't know what the other side was going to do. And there's a lot of people who don't know what the other side is doing. That's like they didn't know that Peter Thiel was behind the Hulk Hogan lawsuit. They didn't know about it until it was over. We will find out who's behind the Janelle Grant stuff probably years after it occurs. But there's somebody behind it, that's for sure. And they're probably not doing it for money. It's probably not doing it for politics either. It's probably for clout. Or a personal grudge, one or the other. And there's no telling who that could be. But it's a very interesting thing. But I think Vince just got so old and so sloppy that it didn't matter that much anymore. I mean, the guy's almost 80 years old. You can't keep that shit under wraps forever. What do you think will happen? What do you think what's going to happen if Vince destroys her? Does he get a legacy title in WWE, or he's going to burn WWE to the ground? I think that if you're Vince McMahon, your feelings about the company is so personal because you built it. And then furthermore, it's your father's company. And to him, it'll always be that. It's his life's work and his dad's life work. He won't destroy it. He won't go after it. He may go after the guys who were responsible for this, which I'm thinking he will find out who's responsible for this eventually. And it's not just, well, the girl she feels strong and empowered now. It's like, no, somebody has already guaranteed her that she's win, lose, or draw, she's going to be fine. All right. And that's what happens with these lawsuits, these sexual assault lawsuits. These women are already told there's nothing going to happen to you. All right. You can come out and say whatever you want. Nothing's going to happen. You're not going to go to jail. You're not going to get arrested. At most, people are going to say you're full of shit. And there's going to be enough people on your side that you may hear that every once in a while, but you won't hear it that much. And then from there, you're going to get a big payout, hopefully. Even if you don't get a big payout, you might get a book deal, or you might get to go on a speaking tour. Like the chick who claims that she was raped by the Supreme Court justice, the male one, the recent male one. What the hell is his name? Her name was Blasey Ford, something Blasey Ford. And she wrote a book, and she's been going on a speaking tour. This woman who cannot prove that she was even raped or anything, there's nothing going to happen to her. There's nothing going to happen. There's nothing going to happen to this guy. This guy who claims that Diddy has forcefully touched his anus and that he was, molested by Cuba Gooding Jr. There's nothing going to happen to this guy. 9 times out of 10, he figured he was probably going to get blackballed anyway, over money more than anything, and said, I'm just going to go out with a bang. I'm going to go out like a Roman candle. If I'm going to get blackballed anyway, which probably was going to happen. Otherwise, you wouldn't do this. You wouldn't go out like this if you weren't going to get blackballed anyway. He's pretty sure he's going to get blackballed. Then you might as well go ahead and go out hard. But people are helping you. There's almost always a secret hand behind these lawsuits and these attempts to destroy other people. But you got to have something that they want. So what does Puff Daddy have that other people want? And how do they intend to get it from him? How do they intend to get it? Well, he paid that Cassie lawsuit so damn quick. Most people didn't even get a chance to read the document. By the time the document was fully read, he had already paid it out. And I think it was in the tens of millions, right? This one hasn't been paid out yet, though. Funnily enough. Just like, Vince didn't pay Janelle Grant to go away yet. He hasn't responded to her either, and it's been over a month. So it's very, very interesting in what was going on here. He's supposed to respond within 3 weeks. But I don't know what's going on. But the Puff Daddy situation is very, very interesting to me. This tells me that he's sitting on some things, that there's probably some folks that he knows want something from him. I mean, look what happened with R. Kelly. Once they put R. Kelly in jail, what's the first thing they did? They took his catalog from him. So he can't make any money. They took it, had to take it. So what does Diddy have that they want? Bad Boy? What is Biggie Smalls' catalog worth? It's the only thing on that goddamn label worth anything. Unless, Diddy has a couple of tracks like All About the Benjamins, but then again, he's been making albums for a long time that I didn't bother to listen to. But he's got something that these people want. And once he gets in so much hot water that he can't pay it out of his own pocket, and they shut down all of his other business ventures, he started losing all these sponsorships, the alcohol companies, the fashion companies, all of these companies back out all at one time. You lose billions of dollars in assets like that overnight. You're destroyed. But you still are in possession of something that we want. And until we get it, we're going to keep hitting you with lawsuits. Either that or we put you in jail, one or the other. All right? Or you die. Those are the three things: either bankrupt you, kill you, or put you in jail. So they put R. Kelly in jail. They killed Michael Jackson. So which one is it going to be for Diddy? Now, this is a civil lawsuit, so he's probably not going to go to jail. Are they going to bankrupt him fighting this thing? It's possible. And this because look, this is just the tip of the iceberg, and that's the thing about the Vince McMahon lawsuit too. Is this stuff is just the tip of the iceberg. A lot of stuff that's going to be in these complaints are probably going to be is nothing but gossip and hearsay and mis what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Unique interpretations of events. You know what I'm saying? Like the forceful touching by Cuba Gooding Jr. when it's just his arm around him. You know, that kind of language. That's what makes people hate lawyers, by the way. So when you look at things like this, and you say to yourself, he could spend hundreds of millions of dollars fighting this thing. Would it be worth it? No, it wouldn't be worth it. Because even if he won, he lose. You know, um, civil is hard to win anyway because it's such a lower standard. Yeah, misinterpretation. Good, thank you. It's such a lower standard. It might not cost you. And then think about the amount of damage that could happen if he was to fight it. And it goes to discovery. And again, as we see, people didn't care about what the complaints were that Rodney Jones had against Sean Combs. They cared about all the gossip and other stuff that was surrounding it. Oh, he's having sex with Meek Mill and Usher, and he's banging strippers and all these other whores and all this kind of stuff. They're doing drugs and selling guns. He's got gangbangers hanging around. If you go to Discovery and they pull his cell phone records, they go through his computer. Who knows what they might find? And Vince is facing the same thing. So even if you want to fight it, even if you didn't do it, the incentive to surrender and settle is so high because you're going to spend so much money defending yourself. And then there's going to be other things that might not be criminal, but might be embarrassing that will come up. Is that what you really want to do? I don't know, man. It's an interesting place, but you got to ask the question, what does he have that these people want? Because somebody put a battery in this guy's back, got him a halfway decent lawyer to really make some of the most outrageous claims of all time. That he's engaged in sex trafficking and RICO deceptions and all this kind of stuff. WG Phil says, I really hope if Trump wins, he urges lawmakers to stop false allegation civil suits and make it law to do a criminal suit. I would absolutely, if I could, I absolutely would prevent, especially from doing it simultaneously. That's what happened with Bill Cosby. It was like a simultaneous civil suit, criminal suit, and then they started using one against the other. I would absolutely mandate that it's a criminal suit first. If you file that you were sex trafficked or sexually assaulted or whatever, it should go to criminal court. And if you win that criminal case, that civil case should get thrown out. How people get over is they don't have enough evidence for a criminal matter, but they'll have enough evidence to get people to believe it probably happened, and then therefore you win the civil case because the civil case is a lower standard. It's preponderance of the evidence. So what is the preponderance of it? It's 51%. 51. Can you believe that 51% of the stuff that Diddy is being accused of actually occurred? Yeah, I can believe that. Do I believe that this guy was forced into having sex with sex workers and all this? No. Do I believe this guy was forced to go to these parties with celebrities? No. No. He's trying to act like he's a good Christian boy who played the instruments in the church and all this, and then he got a wash in the world of, like, how do you even get in Diddy's orbit that he feels like he needs you to live with him for a year? How do you even get in? Most people will bust their ass and will never get anywhere near Sean Puffy Combs. How do you get there? And that becomes like a very interesting question. You know, how did you get in his orbit? How did he find out about you? How did he like you so much that he kept you around for a year? That's you lived in his house. You followed him from one city to another, and from one city to another, and another city. Interesting. Did any other producers follow you on this trip, or just you? Why were you so important that you were the guy following him around for a year, and you only produced 9 songs for the album? How many songs were on the album? Let's take a look. You say you produced 9. I'm going to say there's probably like, what, 12, 13 tracks on there? Let's take a quick look. He said, I hope we get Do-Rag and SummerSlam 92 Vince. I want Vince to fight it too, but I already know that it's going to turn out worse for his family if he does. Because they're going to, all kinds of embarrassing things are going to come out. And he should think of his grandchildren. There's 27 tracks on this album. Oh, that's the extended version. So there's the extended bonus record. So there's 27 tracks. He said he produced 9 of them. Okay, so that's not even, that's a third of the album, thereabout. 3 times 9 is 27. Yeah, it's a third of the album. No, it's 3. Yes, 3 times 9 is 27. Let me make sure my math is right. That would be a third of the album. Okay. I'm always embarrassed to do math live, but I tend to hit more often than not. Yeah, he produced about a third of the album. Oh, so this album came out last year. I didn't know that. I'm looking at Wikipedia, by the way. 2 months following its release, he was subjected to numerous allegations of sexual misconduct, which overshadowed the album's promotion. Interesting. Very, very interesting. How did Jay Dilla produce on Diddy's album? How did that happen? He's been dead for years. It must have been samples. Deliver Me. Had Jay Dilla. Interesting. How did he manage to get a Dilla beat? It's not possible. Well, I guess there's probably hundreds of those things laying around somewhere, right? So, what does Diddy have that they want? Did he make like a big purchase over the last couple of years? He buy somebody's back catalog or something? There's something there, you know. And I'm not saying that there's no truth to what's being said about him, because like I said, I truly believe that there are things being said about him that are true. Just like I think there are things about Vince that are true. But we all engage in things that out of context other people would think is weird or gross or whatever. And if you see some of the text messages that I probably sent to girls, you probably think I'm a kinky abuser and all that kind of shit. But they're into it, you know? It is what it is, man. I don't know. I'll just look at things from a very basic common sense level, that nobody can make you do anything you don't want to do, let alone bang a chick, let alone go get the chicks. I mean, what's the worst that could happen if you didn't do it? They was going to murder you? Were you really believe you could have got on the airplane and left if you were scared of getting murdered? You could have called the cops at any point in time in this situation and had them show up to the studio, or they had the cops on They got the cops paid off. All of them? Is this Serpico? In every city that they go in, they have cops paid off? I don't know. It's just not believable, man. You know, it's like it's Kingpin from Spider-Man level of villainy that we got here. And I get it, but even mob bosses end up in prison because they buy people off, they murder people, and they didn't get everybody. You know, no matter how corrupt the police force, you ain't got everybody. My lips chapped. I don't know. But Diddy being gay, man, that's the least of it. I'm 100% not surprised on that one. Color me not surprised that Diddy likes boy meat. So what? The fact that boy meat was Meek Mill is shocking though. That man make a lot of noise. That's a noisy man. If he's making all that noise in the booth when he's just rapping, imagine if you was rapping him. That's a disaster. That's a disaster. What's also been funny is that I think it ruined Meek Mill's life. That thing ruined his life, dog. It ruined his life. Unfortunately. But outside of Diddy, I know the new thing now is the Sweet Baby situation. I've been watching a lot of videos on it. I know Kotaku did an interview about Sweet Baby Inc., about what they really do. There's a lot of games journalists came out of the woodwork saying that Sweet Baby don't have the authority to override the original game developers. Like, nobody said that. You know, we're additive in every way. Like, yeah, you add pride flags, you add faggots, you add all kinds of stuff to these games. You know, we know what you do. But what the thing, I don't want to talk about Sweet Baby because I don't care about games, but I care about games, but I don't play games. Is that it's another one of those instances where there's literally video of the CEO saying that you should terrify your marketers if they're not going to do what you want them to do. You should terrify them. They on their website said that they use sensitivity readers. This was stuff that was said by the company and the CEO, and then some weirdo just tells you, nope, didn't happen. It ain't what you think. It's like, okay, well, you tell me what she was thinking when she said this. You can't. Like, stop trying to cover somebody else's behavior. You don't know what they do. Like, do I need to? I don't see how they add anything to the games. You give a list of the things that they do, and none of it seems to really add to the game. They help with script writing. What does that mean? Why can't the game already be scripted? Some people claim that Sweet Baby is called in late in the development of the game, and they don't have time to go back and do dialogue or character bios or whatever. Okay, if you say so. But we're in a position now where that's a simple question. Why is there never anybody else's politics in these games? Why is none of the good guys ever Republicans or just plain not interested in anything progressive anyway? They're not activists. There's no pride flags. There's no queerness. There's none of that stuff. It's just much better dialogue than it was before. Why is it all of these games end up with uglier characters, I mean, women who are dumpy with like I saw a picture of what they did to Mary Jane and Spider-Man 2, and I just said, like, why would you buy that game? Why would you pay $80 for Mary Jane Watson is a supermodel, an actress. She got Jay Leno's chin. Why would you buy that game? Why would you buy that game? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And then they have the ability to, because so many people don't buy hard copies anymore, that they can alter your game and take it away from you whenever they want. So many people are looking for the second Gamergate. That's what they want this sweet baby thing to be. It's going to be Gamergate 2.0. It's not. I don't think the fervor around gaming is the same. There's still a lot of gamers. They're still fired up, but I don't think the passion is there now like there was in 2014 or whatever, 2015. So many people walked away and they just don't care anymore because despite the fact that the games journals and Anita Sarkeesian, all they got stomped out of the public square, they just went backstage and started doing a lot of this stuff. You know, like she's not gone. She's just quiet. You know, no longer is she gonna try to have a successful YouTube channel and proselytize, but that hasn't prevented her from going on a speaking tour on college campuses. Haven't stopped her from, making phone, offering her input. It hasn't done anything. So gamers won in public, but they lost in the long run. Your games are even worse now than they were before, and they cost you more. They cost you more. You can't get a physical copy of the son of a bitch anymore. And the same people that you were fighting 10 years ago are still there. And they have recruited more people. This system is absolutely rigged and fucked. And there's not much you can do about it. Unless you consign yourself to never buying games again. And there's only so much of that stuff you can actually do, because I know that for me, it was really hard walking away from games. It became easier the more that planned obsolescence kicked in, when they stopped making games for Xbox 360 or whatever. It forces you to buy the next system. But if I didn't have the money, I just don't got it. So that kind of helped me break cold turkey. Was, oh, we're not making games for that system anymore. Oh, I gotta buy the next thing. Well, shit, I'm not gonna do that then, because I can't break that kind of cash right now. So that really helped. I know comic books is going through the same thing. As comics can become more and more expensive, it's pricing people out, and that's helping them break their attachment to the hobby. And it's going to have to happen to video games too. Like these games, I think they're $70, $80 now. Eventually, it's going to hit a price point where people are going to be like, not just, I don't want to buy the game because it's full of woke shit. It's just going to be, the game's just fucking too expensive. Even if it got the best boob jiggle physics in the world, it's just too expensive. And part of the reason why these games are so expensive is because they have to hire all of these diversity officers who just does nothing but increase the cost of making a game. These people increase the cost of every goddamn thing. Because bureaucrats do that. They bloat costs. So I think people should switch. I know talking about Sweet Baby is interesting because that gets people talking. But you need to be against unnecessary people involved in gaming in general, whether they are DEI or otherwise. It's just a lot of people that there'll be a lot more gamers if games were cheaper. Even with the ugly characters. If people could game affordably, comfortably, there would be more gamers for sure. There would be more people involved in every hobby if things were more affordable. But they're not, and you could tell that's why the prices of things are starting to go up. It's because they're starting to see that it's a dwindling number of people buying a lot of games. And so, in order to combat that, they're raising prices. W.G. Field regretted his decision to buy Spider-Man 2. It felt like a rush job. I mean, they probably wanted to put it out for that movie that came out last year, right? Was it Across the Spider-Verse? They probably wanted the game out for that movie. And that's another thing is, you guys buy these games, man, and they don't even be complete. They still patching the game 3 weeks after you bought it. Like that's nuts. I can't imagine, they're still fixing things. It's like I bought a game, it's incomplete. You can change whatever you want whenever you want. I have to buy things in the game with real money. Like every time I hear about that, that's just dumbfounding to me. The in-game purchases. I'm just like, holy shit. I don't think anybody would have got away with that in like 98 or in like 2006 or anything like that. Like, I couldn't imagine them doing some silly shit like, Final Fantasy 7. You got to buy each disc separately. Like, imagine that shit. That might have actually worked, if we're being honest. Knowing how people love that game now. And now they put out a remake. I don't know. WG Phil says, my gripe about Star Wars fandom is no matter if Kathleen Kennedy is gone, you don't think the successor she has lined up. Yeah, that's the thing, man. Like, you guys, the gamers, the comic book guys, you're not fighting against a person. The people don't matter. That's why I say I'm not political. To me, political people, they care about who's running for the House of Representatives, and they care about who's going to win what seat in Congress. I don't give a fuck about none of that stuff, because ultimately the individuals don't matter. What matters is the ideas. What matters is the ideology. You beat Anita Sarkeesian to the point where she was scared to show her face in public. You won. But did you win really when, all of her friends and people who listen to her and she still has influence? Did you win really? No. No. She's still there. Not only is she still alive, but she's still there. Her friends are still there. They might not have the influence that they want, but they still have influence. So what did you win? You won. She got a bunch of thumbs downs on a YouTube video. You didn't win anything. And now the shit's worse than ever. It's like bed bugs, legit. Like, you think you've gotten rid of them because you don't see them, and then you see one or two, and then you're like, wait a minute. Next thing you know, it's flooded somewhere. You just don't know where. And these DEIs and these wokies, they hide really well. They're amongst you. And you don't see it until it happens, until somebody fucks up and exposes it. But now they talk more than ever. They do tons of interviews and lectures, and they out themselves. So they end up helping you in the long run. But you got to start battling against the ideology. And then you have to also understand that short-term pain versus long-term benefit. Stop buying this shit. Like, these people hate you. And that guy, I forget I wish I remember what his name was, but it was clear. He said, "Stop giving money to people who hate you." It's that simple. It's not just a matter of Sweet Baby. It's a matter of, because if you take Sweet Baby away, did you win? No, because Sweet Baby already told you there's half a dozen, 2 dozen more that do the exact same thing that they do. They're all funded by BlackRock and Vanguard. They do the same thing that you do. They do the same thing they do. And I looked, and WWE, I think 8% BlackRock, 8% Vanguard. That might be incorrect. It might have been weird from a site that I read, because I think it might be 8% BlackRock, but it might be a little bit less of Vanguard. But that's what they're doing, man. And that should have given you a raise of the eyebrows when I started talking about Vince McMahon and they who wanted to get rid of him, doing business with BlackRock and Vanguard. Vince McMahon is a nice little piece of steak. He's an easy target, isn't he? White man, position of authority, supposedly abusing their favorite minority, which is women. And that is their favorite minority right now. For right now, it'd be trans women in a minute, but it's women right now. And you're in the way of something that they want to be able to take and splatter the message all over. And UFC has already said it, that they're gonna start pimping out the ring, because that's what they wanted to do. Vince wanted to have a clean ring. They don't. They want sponsorships all over the place. So don't get surprised when you start seeing pride flags on things, because they got money. They got money. They'll put a pride flag on your WrestleMania quick as shit, and then dare you to say something about it. WG Phil says, "I'm glad WWE isn't too big enough for DEI or Sweet Baby to infiltrate large enough." The more that they grow, the more this DEI stuff is going to spread. Like I told you guys, man. I told you probably 2 years ago, I was listening to a WWE quarterly earnings call, and somebody used the word Latinx. And I said it was going to be a problem. I told you that. And then you started hearing board members say they did quit because things didn't fit in with their values. You're like, what does that mean? And then now you got TKO, Ari Emanuel, and Mark Shapiro. Guess what they have in common? And they basically then booted Vince out of his company. Interesting. Part of it is his own fault, of course. He just got old, man. You're not wise enough when you're old and sloppy. I don't want to be too much of a conspiracy theorist, though. I just think that it's an interesting thing to note, that you're not, like the Bible says, you're not battling against man, you're battling against principalities. You're battling against a collection of ideologies that is like Pac-Man, that seeks to eat everything around it, replace people who know what they're doing with people who don't, and people who just want to do the bidding of the paymasters. As long as they get a paycheck and they get to turn around and promote something that they actually care about, the message, then it's okay. And then Eventually, they will run their course and they'll get kicked out too. That's what's going on with Sweet Baby. Eventually, they're going to run their course and everybody's going to decide it's not worth it anymore. Oh, it's a Sweet Baby detector. Oh no, this thing might actually work. It's going to get pulled. But there's going to be others because they already told you there's going to be more. Shot one zombie in the head. There's thousands more out there. 777K with Okada. Well, nobody's watching Dynamite. What was on that show that you were supposed to watch and enjoy? There's nothing on that show to watch and enjoy. So I will give them some credit though. I heard that the Sting show did $1 million in gross business. I don't know if that was $1 million in ticket sales or if that combined merchandise and other things. But I heard he did very well in North Carolina for Sting's final match. You know, their TV ratings bombed like hell, but I guess the show did okay. They needed that show too, by the way. They needed that show to do well. Keep them alive, keep the buzz going. But it's not really even Okada's fault that he didn't draw. It's Will Ospreay's fault. He was in the main event. But it's not Will Ospreay's fault because Tony Khan picked his opponent. It's Tony Khan's fault. All right. Thank you guys for stopping by. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys later, man. I think Sunday. Sunday. I don't know what the WWE biography is on Sunday, but I'll probably be back then. I gotta check and see what it is. But thank you guys for your time. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.